it's not about just learning a few mannerisms, right? It's not just about make this gesture, stand here, smile, emphasize this word, and you're done.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to show the most relevant and interesting parts of your personality in the way that you communicate.
I was creeping you over the last couple of days, and a lot of the things that you've been doing, and your listening to your TED talks and those sorts of things, and they were awesome. I thought they
Oh,
were
thank
really
you.
really really great. That's kind of where I wanted to start in talking with you. Is
Sure.
and I won't give the synopsis of your most recent TED talk, but the theme kind of is like breaking your belief system, right?
Mhm.
And I have a thesis that I want to share with you about you, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Sure.
As like what you're doing now, and a lot of why you're good at what you do is a function of breaking your belief system. Um, would you agree with that thesis or no?
There are these weird links for sure, but yes, essentially the TED talk that you're talking about was basically encapsulating a whole period of my life that was a huge shift from how I grew up. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that I went through a very, first, very organic and then an intentional breaking away process slash transformation that led me to, yeah, to exploring more of what I should be doing based on what I want versus what I should be doing based on what other people want, whoever they are in my life. So exploring what I really want to do was the very, very long process that got me here to a point where I've created a path for myself that is based on something that I am really passionate about, which is public speaking. And I had just never realized, never thought that I would actually be doing this for a living.
Yeah, and there's such a common thread to me of people that are successful in doing their own thing, where there's always this kind of seminal moment in their lives where something crazy and normally kind of bad happened, and they were able to kind of flip a lot of their beliefs or understanding of how the world worked on its head, and that allowed them to accelerate or see things from a different lens. And I don't know, I think what's so fascinating about you is like you're a great example of that in many different ways. Being entrepreneurial and focusing on something that a lot of people are afraid of, that's definitely one. Honestly, just the way that you present yourself, your appearance, like this is the corporate world that you operate in. Not a lot of people in the corporate world have an eyebrow piercing and purple hair. I think that's cool as hell. Um, and yeah, so I think that there's something interesting about like how much you insert kind of your own flavor of what the person that you want to be into the business world and what you're doing. And I think that that's a hidden superpower for a lot of people. Do you like, was this a conscious move on your part? Was this an organic thing that happened over time? Tell me a little bit about like your story there.
Specifically the story of how I appear or like my brand or just
Yeah.
my story.
Yeah, tell me about like your story, and we can talk about like specifically your looks and your brand after that.
Well, sure. So, you know that annoying kid who always gets up in front of the entire family and recites the most boring poem, that annoying kid was me. So
Okay.
I've loved entertaining people for as long as I can remember, but I just did it for fun. So from a very young age, I sought out every single stage that I could speak on, from neighborhood coffee telling events to later on becoming a corporate trainer in the Fortune 500 world. Did that again on the side along with the actual gig. Didn't realize that I should be looking into communication skills or presentation skills as a living.
Mm,
Then throughout my time as a filmmaker, I was constantly delivering workshops on filmmaking. And then I realized I was actually coaching all these CEOs to speak on camera for the first time. And that's when I realized that speaking in front of an audience, speaking on camera, all the stuff that I just picked up over 15 years or so, that's not the kind of stuff that necessarily comes naturally to a lot of people. In fact, I would see these founders and CEOs of these fast growing startups just get on camera on a media interview or a podcast, and they would become these pale imitations of themselves. They weren't themselves anymore. They weren't impressive in any way. You wouldn't know if this was someone who you should respect or admire unless you saw their title, CEO. And that should never be the case. You should get authority, respect, attention. You should build your reputation based on how you present yourself. So found myself coaching a whole bunch of people, even though I was a filmmaker at the time. And also, I never actually felt like a filmmaker. I never felt like that was my calling in life. So 2 years ago, I decided that I needed to do another pivot. And that was the time where I did a lot of soul searching. I was also getting close to 40 at the time. So I thought it was a really good time to just go for it versus having regrets later. So that's when I really turned to public speaking and realized that the one thing I had been doing as a constant, regardless of career changes and moving to different countries and continents, the one thing I'd been doing, speaking in public, that's the one skill set that I now teach to entrepreneurs and also people in the corporate world.
It's cool how you can pick your head up and be like, oh, I'm good at this thing. And maybe I should double down at this thing. What did you want to do? What was your original path before doubling down on the public speaking thing? Hey there, real quick. Can you do us a quick favor and hit the subscribe button down there somewhere? As a new and growing pod, subscribes are really important for us, for people to find us. We do this for free to provide you value in your work and in your life. And if you could just do this one thing for us, it would really help us to continue providing that value. So, real quick subscribe. Back to the video. Happy listening.
I was always very much an experimenter, very much a let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes kind of person. But I never had a fixed path or a plan for life at all. I've just, from the time that I can remember as a young adult, I've never had one of those fixed directions in life. You know how you meet people and they say, I want to be this and I want to be this. I was just taking life as it came along and ended up going the corporate route, ended up going the entrepreneurship slash artistic route, just very organically, meandering. I call it a very meandering, wandering journey.
Nice. Resonates. Do you, so you, as a, even as a kid, you were a performer, and you're getting up and reading poems and doing that kind of stuff. Would you identify as an introvert or an extrovert?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that you need to be an extrovert to be a good public speaker?
Not at all. No. Most extroverts might have a gift of gab. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're good public speakers. And a lot of introverts might be very shy or timid, but they can become extraordinary public speakers. So your personality type has really almost nothing to do with the art of being able to connect with people. Because that's where I feel is the missing link, where people think of public speaking and they think of it as just being behind a lectern or a podium or just doing these big fancy speeches once in a while. But
Hmm.
public speaking is really the art of being able to connect with many as if you're having a conversation that's one to one with every single person. If you can make people feel like you're connecting with them, then you're an outstanding public speaker.
Yeah, that kind of gets to the definition, right? Which is, I think, a good way to frame up the rest of this conversation. When we talk about public speaking, we're not
Mhm.
just talking about standing behind a podium at a conference speaking out to hundreds of people, right?
Yeah.
How would you define public speaking?
Speaking to any kind of an audience. So if you're speaking to your team, you're doing public speaking. If you're giving an update in a meeting, you're doing public speaking. Or for sure, if you're going to a conference, if you're doing a podcast, if you're doing a live event, that's all public speaking. A lot of people draw this strange distinction between speaking in person and speaking online. And they don't seem to think that speaking online is public speaking, when It absolutely is. Anytime that you're speaking on a podcast, for example, you're speaking to an audience. If you're doing a live event, you're speaking to an audience. The audience can be there live, or if they listen to you later, you should still be speaking in a way that connects with people. And that's still speaking to an audience.
Yeah. This was one of the things that Derek and I, when we started this podcast, we had observed in our own careers was that
Mm,
when you're coming up in the business world and stuff, you learn some technical skills in school and then in your early job, and you're doing them and you're doing fine and you're growing. But you start to realize that you plateau unless there's a, oh, I have my nose is stuffy too. I'm having like terrible allergies. So if I reach for a tissue, we're in the same boat there. Um, but yeah, you you start to plateau, right? Unless you start putting some kind of energy and emphasis on all of the other things outside and on top of like your technical skills, your math, or the way that you code, or the way that you build a financial model, whatever it is. And I get excited about public speaking because once I started focusing and making a concerted effort on getting good at communicating in all of these different forums, not behind a podium, because I've done that, maybe a handful of times, but like you said, standing up in a meeting, giving an update, maybe even challenging in a meeting or something like that. That's where a lot of the leverage came. That's where a lot of the acceleration came in my career. And that's a lot of who we talk about too on this podcast, is like focus on human skills because they're an accelerant. Um,
mm,
and so I'm curious, from your standpoint, you work with a lot of different people. You work with entrepreneurs and Fortune 500 folks and people that work in tech. So a lot of the same people that listen to this. What are the common problems? Like, people are coming to you. Like, what are the things that you see in them where you're like, this is the 80% thing that you need to work on to level up your public speaking?
The key thing that we work on is making sure that you understand what is needed from you as a speaker and you know the right way of tapping into it. So it's it's not about just learning a few mannerisms, right? It's not just
Mm,
about make this gesture, stand here, smile, emphasize this word, and you're done.
right.
It's about figuring out how to show the most relevant and interesting parts of your personality in the way that you communicate. So, how do you create an experience where you can go and speak and people pay attention? They get a feel for who you are, what you stand for. Very often in the corporate world, especially, it's it's very difficult to stand out because of all these factors, right? First, you're meant to conform, you're meant to fit in, you're meant to be part of the culture, which is all great. But when you're communicating, when you're presenting, you want to stand out. You want to be better than other people that are, for example, considered for the same promotion as you. You want to be standing out as a leader for your team and for your management. You want to be building your reputation. So, all those things can happen so quickly if you can use every single speaking opportunity to create that reputation, that credibility, so that every time people hear you speak, they're like, oh, yeah, Sam knows exactly what he's talking about. I saw him present here. And it was just incredible the way that he spoke, his personality. That's what you want people to be saying about you in front of you and behind your back.
Totally. I I have so many gripes about the corporate world, even though I've been in it for 11 plus years. It's so funny. And one of the biggest ones is corporate speak, or
Mm,
just this sheen that people put over the way they communicate because they're at work, where you're not talking to like a human anymore. You're talking to like this corporate cyborg. And there's different caricatures of this corporate cyborg. I know this is like a funny little analogy, but um, I work in crypto, and we talk to a lot of like people in financial services and on Wall Street. They talk like this with the asset classes that are most relevant to today's financial investors and da da da. You know what I mean? It's very like standard and monotone.
Mhm.
And then you talk to like a Silicon Valley PM type, and they're just full of jargon. You know, it's
Mm.
and so I don't know. There's all these different archetypes for corporate speak, and there's very very little to your point, like personality that kind of comes through. No one ever tells you that either. Like, bring your personality out in the way that you communicate. And it's, to me, I agree so much, and it's so freaking powerful. How does one do that? How does one like bring their personality out in the way they communicate? How do you coach that?
Right. So there are two principles that I use in my coaching. One is working from the inside out, and one is working from the outside in. So, from the inside out means figuring out if there are any beliefs, any limiting beliefs that you hold that are holding you back from being fully yourself, fully relaxed, fully in control when you speak. Because it's that element of control that's what I've seen is the trickiest part. That's what messes people up. When they don't feel like they're in control, that's when they stress, they panic, they talk too fast, they aren't effective. They just want
Mm,
things to get over with, or they start rambling, for example. It's all about control, self awareness, and control. So we work a lot on, for example, reframing negative beliefs if you have them, figuring out what is the personality that you want to show. How do we amplify it? If you're a lighthearted, humor filled, a funny person, then how do we take that
funny
humor
could be
out?
humor filled. Yeah, absolutely.
Humor filled. Yeah.
Full of
You know what
humor. I just
happens?
got to get it out.
Yeah. Sometimes I think in French, and I believe in French, it's humorist, so it's you're
Oh,
you're
nice.
adding humor. So if that's an aspect of your personality that you want to showcase, then leaning into that. But all of that stems from being able to relax in the moment, essentially. So some of that
Mm,
work you have to do inside. And then, of course, knowing what are the skills that you need to showcase. So there are a lot of people that are relaxed, that don't feel nervous, but they're not effective when they speak. They're monotonous, like you said. They don't engage with people using their energy, their expressions, their body language. So that's working on the outside, which is the speaking toolkit that
mm.
you want to have. And that is part of what I teach, where I work on your voice, your energy, your body language to turn you into a charismatic speaker so that when you speak, you know what are the tools you need to use. Those are the two principles.
Chronologically, I assume you start inside out and then work to outside in. Is that right? Or
No,
does it depend?
it's interwoven. We can't just work on one aspect of it because A, people are impatient, and
Mm.
B, people want action. We're all very action oriented folks. So when we're not learning a very specific technique, a very specific framework, we feel like, oh, it's good, but what am I learning? Where's the actual skill?
You're making me do all
So
this fluffy stuff, like focus on my limiting beliefs. Like, where's the thing I can use in the meeting on Monday? That makes
right?
sense.
Exactly. And there's always a meeting on Monday. So it's not like you can just stop life and just work on the inner beliefs and the inner confidence. You have life going on alongside. So yeah, we always work on both side by side. But the inner work takes much longer. It
Yeah,
is slightly easier and it's a shorter learning period when you work on the tools. You know, stand like this, project your voice, change the way that you add intonations, things like that. You can learn those in a matter of weeks or months. For some folks, it takes months. But for the inner confidence piece, it can take years.
yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and it's pragmatic too, right? Give us some stuff that we can do now, and then for the longer run, let's focus on like building a stronger foundation. I
Mhm.
I think the limiting beliefs part, the reason I asked that is because again, this has been my experience. It's been really powerful. Like when you focus on what are those limiting beliefs, it gives you a lot of leverage. So What's an example of like a limiting belief and how that manifests for someone in public speaking and maybe hurts them?
Yeah, a very common one is I don't want to mess up. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to fail. That is giving yourself too much pressure, putting so much pressure on yourself. I got to be perfect. I got to make sure I perform. I got to make sure that I come up to people's expectations. None of that stress is going to actually help you perform well. So reframing that fear is essentially a fear of failure. So it's not a positive mindset, right? Reframing that to I know I have the tools I have to succeed. I have the tools that I need. And that's taking all the tools that we learned together, how to use your voice, your energy, your body language, and telling yourself that now you're prepared. So why should you be scared of losing? Why should you be scared of not being a perfectionist? You are prepared. So changing that is a very common one. Another one is the audience, fear of the audience. So that's a big one, especially when you're speaking and presenting in front of a wide audience or in front of management. And I've had even CEOs, for example, talk about this when they have an imposter syndrome, for example, and they're speaking to their board, or when they feel like they're just not in the loop enough, or they don't know enough details and they feel very unsure of themselves. And the belief there is that the audience will judge me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big one that we try to target, because really the audience is not there to judge you unless you're on American Idol. There, yes, they might be interested in judging you, but
Yeah.
most of the time in your Monday meeting, in your presentation with your board, they're not there to judge you. They are there to make the best use of their time. They are there to learn. They're there to get insights, to get information. And as long as you can help them, as long as you can deliver the right information in the best way, you're doing your job and you're over delivering. Because most people don't know how to do that, to both
Yeah.
of those things really well. So that's a really big reframe that's going to again decrease the pressure you're putting on yourself. No one can perform well if all they're thinking about is, oh my god, I'm just being scrutinized, I'm under a microscope. So
Yeah.
change that thought from the audience is judging me to the audience is here to learn. They're just here to learn. If I can leave someone knowledge rich after my presentation, my meeting, my talk, then I've succeeded.
Yeah. This is cool, and reframes again. I think are very much tied to this idea of leverage for me, because when I've come to mentors or other people before when I was more junior and been like, I'm struggling with this, presenting or this meeting or whatever. And a lot of the common guidance that you get is you just need the reps. You just need to keep doing it and it'll get easier. And there's some
Mm-hmm.
truth to that. Not going to lie. Like you got to practice and you got to do it. And you got to start small and just continue doing it. Totally agree. But reps, that comes from like going to the gym, right? Would you go to the gym and just throw weights around and stuff and like hope that you're going to leave with a six pack? Would you have no plan? Would you have no system? Like no, you wouldn't do that. You would hire a trainer or a coach or look up a plan and a system, track your macros, track your calories, and make sure that you're getting the most out of every single rep. Those are good reps. So just getting the guidance of get the reps is fine, but make sure those reps are good. How do you make sure those reps are good is doing the stuff that you're talking about, which is reframing some of this stuff. Okay, next time I go into this board presentation where I need to present the numbers, I'm going to try this thing that Nasheen told me where like don't think about it like they're going to judge me. Think about it like they need the information that I have and I'm holding the keys to that information. That's how you get good reps. Would you agree with that? And how do you think about this idea of like failing and how that can be scary for some people that are just starting out? It's like I gotta fail a bunch of times. Like reps sound exhausting and awful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the analogy. It absolutely works. There are a lot of people that get practice or so-called practice or reps by doing a lot of presentations who never watch themselves back. So they have no idea whether they're effective or not. And it does get easier, but that doesn't mean it gets better. Just because you're now doing an average or a mediocre job at delivering a presentation and you can pretty much get through the presentation doesn't mean that you're as interesting, impressive, worthy of their attention as you can be. So, going in with the mindset that I need a plan, I don't just want to practice because I don't want to just practice in bad habits. That's absolutely the best way of going about it. And the idea is to understand what to look for. What is it that makes a good speaker? How are they playing with their voice? What are they doing with their energy, with their body language, with their eye contact, with their expressions, with the emphasis, with the way they're using their content? How are their sentences looking? Are they varying sentence lengths? Are they using words that connect to us? Are they using stories? So, looking at what are the different things you can analyze and then working on how does that map on to you as a speaker. Okay, what is my body language like? What is it, how is it that I'm speaking? So first discovering your natural patterns and then figuring out what are your strengths, what are your opportunities, and working on your opportunities. So that's a framework that you can use to have that strategic practice and then to get your six pack abs in the speaking world.
Ah, nice. Thank you for carrying forward my analogy there. Um, I love it. And if I think about some of the most impactful speakers that I know, they are unapologetically themselves in a lot of ways. And I have a couple of examples. I mean, I was just rewatching the Scott Galloway TED Talk the other day, which is like one of the most popular TED Talks this past year. And
Mm.
he breaks so many rules about public speaking in that talk. Like he's kind of hunched over, he swears a shit ton, and he talks kind of fast. He says a lot, but he also just he's so authentically himself in it. It's like it's wild. And he goes on these rants and gets angry. Like he uses all of these like pieces, and I consume a bunch of his content because I think he's great. And it's like, yeah, this is just this dude being himself, like up on a stage, right? And I mean, you said it at the beginning there as well, like bring like some of the most relevant pieces of your personality, in who you are and what you stand for, like into how you speak. So how does one do that? How does one like figure out what those relevant pieces are, and how do I insert them into the way that I'm talking, and be thoughtful about the fact that like I'm doing it in the right places at the right times. It sounds like a challenging thing to do.
Yeah, it can be an intensive experience, but it absolutely pays off. So it's carrying on from what I was talking about in the last response. That was pretty much the roadmap. And that also answers what you're asking now in terms of how do you incorporate your personality. You don't do it right at the beginning.
Mm,
So, just like if you were learning how to paint, for example, first you would analyze the masters, figure out what are the techniques, what are the rules of the game per se. And then you figure out, okay, now I know the rules of the game. Now I know what good speakers do. What are the things that I can use as tools to enhance my message? And now what is my style? So that comes at a later stage after you learn the basics, after you know how do I make sure that I get the audience's attention for this one thing? How can I make them laugh for this other thing? How do I get them to respond to this question? And once you're good with the basics, once you're really strong as a speaker in terms of knowing the foundations of good speaking, that's when you can start exploring, well, what personality do I showcase? And then it's really about leaning into sharing parts of you, whether it's in the form of bringing in stories or, like I said earlier, leaning into jokes. If you're a funny person, it can be about sharing parts of you, sharing how you're feeling, sharing who you are. And especially in the corporate world, like you were talking about a while ago, this is the biggest challenge. where you have to really navigate what's acceptable. But then, especially if you're in any kind of a position of authority, you can also really nudge the boundaries. And that's where I've
Yeah.
seen the biggest difference in terms of folks that are in an environment where they feel comfortable enough that they can contribute versus a hostile environment where the culture doesn't actually let them feel comfortable enough, or if they feel like they're under pressure all the time.
Yeah, that's cool. How has this manifested for you? You're great at public speaking. Like what how have you found out like how to insert your personality and where and what was your experience with doing that? Did you try it and it didn't work and you iterated, or was it something that just kind of came organically to you? What was your experience?
Yeah, I've tried showing many different parts of my personality in many different ways for sure. And yes, a
Mm,
lot of that hasn't worked, some of it has worked. The initially sharing parts of you, sharing your personality, that is sometimes linked to how much of a private person you are or how much of an extrovert versus introvert you might be, if you want to use those labels. And I don't want to generalize, but overall, I've seen that a lot of extroverts are pretty okay sharing parts of their story or themselves. And a number of introverts are more private about it. So it takes them more intentionality and practice. So, yes, being extroverted, I never minded the idea of sharing my story. In fact, I liked it. I wanted to share who I was and my story. But what personality to put on top of it, that I really stumbled around with that. So, for example, there was a time when I was really angry with the world. This was in my late 20s. It was very,
ah,
very
yeah.
close to the time period we were talking about earlier, where I really broke away from all these systems of belief. I left my job, my marriage. I left the country I grew up in, and it was a great creative period, but I was angry. I was angry with the world. And I did a few
Mhm.
stand up shows at the time that were
Nice.
recorded. I can't watch them now.
Oh, come
I,
on.
I, I cringe when I watch them because I'm so angry. I'm so angry with everything. And that's not me. I can't identify with it. But
Mm.
it is really an experimental process where you have to experiment with what is the personality that I want to bring. And with some people, it really works when you showcase a very specific type of personality because that's your calling card. People consume so much now, right? So many TikTok videos and YouTube shorts and Instagram reels. At some point, everyone just starts kind of melting together in your head. So if you can figure out a way to use your personality to stand out, that's the best thing you can do in terms of creating that personal brand.
Yeah, I'll share my experience with this too. Is I learned over time that I'm pretty good with small talk, like the pre-conversation small talk or even intra-conversation small talk and making it interesting. I hate talking about the weather. I hate talking about traffic. It grinds my gears to no end. But you know that especially on a video call, those few minutes where everyone's kind of trickling in and the heads are popping up on the screen, and most of the time there's silence. I'm always the one filling that silence. And I learned over time that that relaxes me, especially if it's me who's presenting in the moment. There is going to be presenting in the next 5 minutes or something. If I can crack some jokes and just be silly and stupid in that first 5 minutes, I am way more calm about all of the content that I'm about to present or talk through because I get to grease my wheels on that. But that was just something that I learned about myself over time. And back to the introvert extrovert thing, that probably sounds like hell for an introvert, right? Like people get on the video call and they don't want to talk at all because it's just not their thing, and that's fine. Whatever it is for you, and kind of the message is try to find it, which is cool. Which brings me to another question for you, and we've kind of danced around it a little bit as we've been talking. Is this idea of the analog world versus the virtual world with respect to public speaking? You do a lot of thinking and create a lot of content on this. What are the big misses or gotchas when thinking about the analog world versus the virtual world in public speaking? What should people be conscious of? And yeah, what are your thoughts there?
The number one thing is that people do wrong when thinking about speaking online versus speaking in person. I like that you used in the analog world. So speaking in the analog world versus the
Yeah.
online world. The
Yeah.
biggest mistake I've seen people make is thinking that they're two different beasts. They're really not. Because if you're a good speaker, you're a good speaker anywhere. And that's always the intent behind the work that I do with clients, where regardless of whether you have one particular upcoming keynote or whether you have one podcast or one webinar that you're really worried about, if you can become a strong speaker, then you can tackle any speaking opportunity. So they're really not very, very different. And the folks that treat them as very different are the ones that excel in one and are very unfamiliar with the other. So I've seen a lot of people, for example, struggle who are very used to in person presentations, where
Mm.
they're used to getting energy and vibe from the audience. They're used to reading people's expressions. And you put them in front of a camera, especially in a situation where people don't have their cameras on, they can't see anything, or they have to present, and they are completely out of their depth. They feel very ill at ease. And it's the same with people that are very used to speaking online, and you put them on a stage and they freeze up because they've compartmentalized the two skill sets when they're actually really similar. Because what you're doing is essentially communicating with humans, whether it's online or on a stage. It's the same psychology at work.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And I feel like it has these other externalities. Like when you think about virtual communication as something completely different, you tend to act different. Maybe you just wear sweatpants. you know, I could be wearing sweatpants right now. You wouldn't even know. Um, but then also, like, if it's virtual, so whatever. I mean, I don't need to have my hair look good. It can be a mess, or the lighting in my room can be crap, and it doesn't matter. We're virtual. I really appreciate your content because you obsess over the details of this stuff, and I think obsessing over the details with respect to like human skills is uh, perfect practice, great practice. When it comes to like virtual communication and the details, one of a, one of my favorite pieces of career advice is just get the easy shit right. Like like show up to the meeting on time, bring your laptop, like those kinds of things, right? What are the easy things with virtual communication that people are messing up?
I love that advice because really the lower hanging fruit, it's right there. Grab it. And you said it really well when you said that there are things that you can do online when you show up in meetings that can really help build your reputation. And it's the same idea at work. If you're showing up to a meeting, you'd be well dressed. You'd want people to see you. You don't want to be hiding behind a mask. So, the number one thing is to have your camera on
Mm,
even if others don't have it on, because that way you are standing out. You are literally being visible. So, number one, just have your camera on. That would be the easiest thing to do.
one button,
Not,
so simple.
yeah, yeah, I want to say maybe not easiest, but simple, because of course it
Yeah, yeah,
takes work. You need to be presentable
yeah.
and have an idea of where the frame is, have an idea of what you're putting in the frame. So, have your camera at eye level, because when your camera is too high, it makes you look small. This is a technique that Hollywood uses all the time, where they make you, they have a very high camera angle if they want to make someone look like a victim,
Mm,
right? Look like they're just so small, they don't matter. And if your camera is too low, if your laptop is like here, then you look dominating. You just look like a big monster, like a giant. Who's, or who doesn't really know how to frame their camera if you can see up your nose.
yeah,
So
yeah.
having your camera at eye level, please do it. Something that people often get wrong or don't think about is that you can have a different way of putting or setting your laptop for a meeting versus when you work. Because when I work, for example, my camera is a totally different place, and I want my system to be at a different height and everything. But when you're in a meeting, especially when you're presenting, make an effort to move around your laptop so that your camera is at eye level. It doesn't need to be the permanent position for your system. So eye level, and making sure that all of you is in the frame, using your gestures so that you don't look like you're just a floating head. That
Mm.
adds to trust as well. So when we were cavemen, we always observed people's hands first to determine whether they were a friend or a foe. And that programming is still in our brain somewhere. So if you can't see my hands, after a little while, you might start feeling uneasy. You might start, and you can't explain it. It's just, it should already be happening now. Like what's happening? Where are her hands? Why aren't they
Is she
moving? Where are
texting? What's
they?
going on?
The gigantic dagger that she's gonna
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
piercing the screen with to
Yeah.
stab me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Terrifying.
showing your hands, having the right framing, and then you mentioned lighting as well. So lighting is one of them. Just making sure you're in a nice, well lit area. So many people sit with their backs to a window, and it's daytime, and they're just silhouetted because you can't fight sunlight coming from a window behind you. So sitting in front of a window, or sitting with the window off to a side, or just sitting in a space where there's no natural light, but enough light around you to light your face so that you're clear. Just getting those basics right goes such a long way.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. What if I'm listening to this podcast? I'm like, I get it, Nasheen. Like that all makes sense and everything. But when I'm on calls and our CEO and executive team, like they are not even doing this stuff. Their lighting is crap, and their camera is off to the side. I'm looking at their cheek or something. Like, is this stuff really that important? What would you say to them? Like, these people already have such influence and they're senior and they're not doing it. Like, why do I need to do it?
Well, there are two things. There are two reasons why you should consider doing it. One is that you want to stand out. So there's a sea of mediocrity. You can either choose to be a part of it, or you can choose to stand out. It's your decision. So
I love
if
it.
everyone else is doing one thing and that's not super effective, you can choose to do something different. So that's one reason. And the second reason is a number of people do have authority based on their title. That's just a fact of the world that we live in. We give authority to people that have senior titles, and very often they may not need to be exceptional speakers. They should be, because they can't last for very long if they are terrible communicators. But if you don't have automatic authority based on your title, then you should absolutely be speaking like you do, because that's the way to get that authority. That's the way for people to think of you as someone who's promotable, someone who's already speaking like a leader, someone who is absolutely ready to be more senior than they are. People should be surprised by how junior you are if they learn your title, because the way that you're speaking is so far beyond your title. That's what you should really aspire to do.
There's this spectrum in the working place, and I feel like there is this minority of folks who they have this technical ability that just stands out, and it's going to be able to propel them throughout their career, and they're going to grow and they're going to be successful without thinking about their camera lighting and how they communicate and how they take feedback. They're just these brilliant people that are doing these brilliant things, the Sam Altmans of the world, right? I think a lot of the message that we have, and I think you just kind of stated as well, is assume that's not you. It's just, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay that that's not you, because there's a much faster way to accelerate, and you can do that by focusing on all of this minutia. It's not hard work necessarily in a lot of ways. It's just getting some of these basics right, and that will open up credibility for you in ways that you never thought possible. So I totally agree. And like, think about the amalgamation of that. Oh, how many meetings are you in a year? 100,
Mm.
200, 300? I don't know. Like, I feel bad for you if it's more than that, but it's probably true. And every single one of those meetings, just if your camera was on and people saw your face, think about the amalgamation of all of those meetings and you being able to have face to face versus not. That's crazy. And so,
Mm.
yeah, it totally resonates what you're saying. Um,
I also wanted to just add on to that bit about, getting away with being a terrible communicator. Just
Mm.
based on what I've seen, you can't get away for too long. So I literally work with CEOs and senior team members who come to me and say, "Yeah, Nausheen, I've had this really accelerated career path because I've excelled in this technical stuff, but I feel lost now. Now that I'm in the senior position and I have to speak to the whole company, they feel nervous, they feel out of place, they feel ineffective." And I've actually worked with clients who had literal incidents of going blank when they've had people expecting them to speak and then running off of stage
Oof.
and being traumatized by that experience, especially as a senior leader. So it's just because someone has that title and you are listening to them doesn't mean that by the end of that talk, you're not going to think, wow, this person is the CEO. Really? Like, that did not sound like someone I should have listened to, or how did this person get promoted? So you
Yeah.
don't want to disappoint people, especially yourself, even if you have that title.
Yeah, it's like putting a 500 horsepower engine into a Toyota Corolla chassis or something like that. It's bound to break down eventually, right?
Mm.
That's a great call out. Is um, these people are not superheroes in a lot of ways. Like they can get to that point. Maybe they do struggle. Um, okay, two kind of, I don't know, fun questions maybe to wrap here.
Mm.
What's your biggest failure with respect to public speaking, like in your public speaking career? Do you think what's something where you're like, oh
Ah.
man, that was a learning experience for me?
You know what's interesting is you call it a public speaking career, but because it's something I've just done for fun,
Yeah,
for my love of it, I don't even think of it as a career because I've just been speaking on and off and just all
yeah.
over the place everywhere. I Thankfully, I wouldn't say I've ever had a public speaking failure simply because I've enjoyed it so much. I haven't always been good, of course, that's not possible. But I've always loved it. I've just loved every single time I've had to go and speak. I would say that the toughest times that I ever had was when I was living in China and I had just started building my brand and I had just started the business, but I was literally on the other side of the world and there were massive internet problems, like massive, because you had to go through VPNs and
Oof.
reroute stuff. I mean, stuff that you know about given your technical background. And that was the most awful time because I had these big grand aspirations and ambitions. I wanted to be on podcasts, I wanted to do live events, and every single time something went wrong. And I still persisted, but it was torture because you could never be sure of connectivity and you had to have backup plans for example, when you're presenting, you're doing a live workshop, you're doing a training, you need to have a backup plan for what happens if I get disrupted? How do I get back? How do I make sure I stay on track? So, one of the very first corporate workshops that I did, I was still in China and it was a paid workshop. And I believe I got disconnected maybe 3 times. And
Oh,
I felt mortified, even though everyone was very patient, because I
yeah.
just didn't know what else to do.
Oh man, so tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's like a room full of people on the other side, right? And that must just
Yeah.
be so
We're all
uncomfortable.
being we're all being so nice about it, but then you're just like, I just want the earth to swallow me at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, like get anything just to get me out of this situation. There's something similar. We have there's about 1,000 people that work at our company, and we have like an internal company conference every year. And sometimes we have external customers like dial in, big conference
Mm,
hall, 1,000 people in the room, and they dial in, and they're on these two massive monitors. And this was like our biggest customer, or actually they weren't even a customer, potential customer. We're trying to do a deal with them, and this was like,
mm,
come talk about like the potential partnership, and we were trying to cheese them up and everything. And the BD guy that was running the deal was the guy on stage. He was sitting on a chair on stage by himself in front of 1,000 people with the guy calling in projected behind him. And then like the guy's internet dropped like after the first 2 minutes of the call, and this poor BD guy was just like sitting on stage like like, I can't even imagine how uncomfortable that must have been for him. So I totally get it. The technical difficulties can be super challenging. Okay, last question. What about your biggest win? Maybe not in your career, in your public speaking life. Like, what have you done where you're like, man, I'm proud of that. Like this is what I do this for.
All the TEDx talks, for sure, they're up there. But after my second TEDx talk, that's when I had the most number of people come up to me and just talk to me about how they felt more energized after the talk. The talk was about getting yourself out there, telling your story, being visible, and how telling your story to an audience actually then has an effect on how confident you feel about yourself. So the act of storytelling, telling your story, is linked back to adding to your own confidence and self-belief, which is something people don't think about because they think it's the other way around, that you need to have confidence first to be able to tell your story. But yeah, it's actually the opposite. It can be the opposite. So right after I did this talk, I had several people come up to me. One of them was this lady who just said, I wasn't expecting this today. I heard your story and I heard your message, and I'm literally going to go now and I'm going to start posting my story and creating some content based on who I am and what I do, because I've never thought about it before, but this is inspiring me and I needed to let you know. And I was just blown away by that. Just the fact that I went on a stage and I said a few words, and someone's going to take action literally based on what I said. It just, that gives you that feeling, that immediate feeling of, wow, I did something that was meaningful to someone. That's incredible. That's what you do it for. You don't just do it for the applause or the video that's uploaded later on YouTube. All of that is great. It's fantastic. But really having someone telling you that is something that's going to make me change the way that I do something, and you made a positive impact, that's incredible.
So cool. That's, I mean, one of the first things that you said was it's about connecting with the other person. Public speaking is about connecting with the person on the receiving end. And like this was a success story in that you're able to inspire action from it. So what a great place to end. Nasheen, thank you so much for all of the information. I think a lot of people are going to get a ton out of this conversation. Maybe just take a minute and tell people where they can find you and learn more about everything that you're doing.
Sure. Speaking.coach. That's the website to go to. You'll get a lot of free resources there. In fact, there is a free course on how to start speaking fearlessly that has all the info on the tools we talked about in the podcast, your voice, your energy, your body language, how to use them. So it teaches you all the basics and it's for free. So you just have to go to speaking.coach to get that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nasheen. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sam. This was great. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us at The Workflow. If you like what you just heard, could you take 1 second and give us a like, subscribe, follow, or leave a review on the platform you're listening to this podcast? It will really help us out as we're growing pod. We'd also love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, folks you'd want us to chat with, or any feedback in general, just shoot us a note at workflowshow@gmail.com. Again, that's workflowshow@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.